Having the ability to program is probably the best skill that you can probably have in today's society, in today's market, and it's probably, in my opinion, up there with having the ability to understand medical situations, because the stuff that you have to build and solve problems for are on or can be on the same types of level. Now, I'm not saying that everything is, but it can be. And the importance and the feel of software engineers cannot be understated. But learning to code or having the ability to write some things on a screen is not enough. You can't just be able to write hello world and put some things together and slap some code together anymore and expect to be able to be serviceable long term as a software engineer in today's market. That's why in this video, I'm going to give you 7 things that you can do right now to become a demigod programmer. Now, the first thing that you need to do is become very, very intimate with the fundamentals. And I mean very, very intimate. And I know this might seem like a very big oversimplification, but I mean this with every developer fiber of my being. Please come closer. Learn the basics really well. Learn the basics really well. Things like inheritance and polymorphism, functional programming and why it's useful, data structures and algorithms and where they're the most useful, and a host of a bunch of other different things. But please get really close with the fundamental, because if you take the time to really learn them now in the beginning and really throughout the entirety of your programming journey, hopefully throughout your programming life, but if you take the time to do it well, it will save you time and headaches later on. And now I know what you're thinking. How the heck do we actually do that? Well, I got you covered right there as well. Here's some steps, some practical steps on how to get that done. First things first, practice. Yes, I'm talking about practice. And I mean, practice the fundamentals every day if you can, but at least no less than twice a week. And the way that you can practice these fundamentals is by teaching someone else that preferably doesn't know anything about code, or use websites like LeetCode, Coding Game, HackerRank, or you can also use Code Wars. Next up on our list is diversifying your skill set. And this can come in a very big, broad array of different ways of doing this. But I'm going to try and distill this in a bite-sized chunk as much as possible. And the most obvious thing here is learning multiple programming languages. Learning multiple programming languages exposes you to a different way of handling different problems in certain situations. And learning different languages and paradigms is never a bad thing, because it broadens your perspective to the types of problems that are being solved and how you can actually get them done, because you now have the ability to choose the right tool for the job. Similar to the way that a carpenter would choose the right tool for their job, you now have more tools in your tool belt to actually get things done. And also, becoming more versed in low-level and high-level languages makes you a well-rounded developer with a broader set of versatile skills, especially in an age where a lot of people like to pigeonhole themselves in one specific area. But I have to forewarn you, this will make you uncomfortable, because it is making you start over again and again and again. But if you become comfortable with being uncomfortable in that situation, it will make you incredibly useful and valuable to any team that you're on. So again, how do you do this? Well, obviously, once again, the low-hanging fruit here would be learning a new language, because once more, that is never a bad idea. But when you do learn the new language, learn one that is completely different from your primary language, something that is primarily, if you're high level at this point, go low level. So for example, if you're using something like Python, try getting more familiar with C. Then try focusing on the very key fundamentals of that particular language, and then also try and translate that to your primary language as well. Then after you have some basic knowledge about that particular language, go try and build a project, because that will uncover all the holes that you have in your knowledge. From there, plug those in with documentation and reading Stack Overflow and all kinds of other resources.
Power levels 8,000. How? Wait, it's over 9.
The next thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is finding ways to get better at solving problems. Find ways to engage in regular coding problems online, coding hackathons and marathons, and really just find ways to up your algorithmic problem solving game. You can even do this on your phone with an app like Brilliant. And in terms of hackathons and meetups, you can find those on the Meetup app and inside of Eventbrite, or use good old Google to just find free hackathon events around your city. But if you're an introvert similar to the rest of us, you can use HackerRank or LeetCode to get your practice in. And if you've never heard of this before, you can also make this a little bit more fun by using Codin Game or the Odin project to actually make your learning a bit more gamified as you're advancing in your skill. But the biggest thing that you want to take away from this is finding ways to solve more problems in everyday life and in situations where you could use code, and probably even find ways to go out of your way to make a coding situation where there probably would not have been before. But to give yourself some structure, let me give you some pointers on what you should focus on to start. So the first thing you want to do is set up your practice routine, basically so that you can follow it daily, weekly, or monthly. And I would suggest going daily, because if you practice and code doing things daily every single day, there's no way that you don't get better. But dedicate a specific time in the day or in the week or in the month to focus on this particular part of your skill set. Me, I usually like to wake up 5 o'clock in the morning to actually get that done, because my house is probably the quietest it's ever going to be at that time, because my kids are sleeping still, no one's up, and I can get some really focused work done in terms of code. But while you're doing this focused work, make sure that you're focusing on areas that you're weak in. But when you actually uncover them, don't ignore it. Actually write it down, go research what you don't know. Then after you've done all that stuff, participate in coding challenges and hackathons so that you can actually get different perspectives from other people on your own skills, and you can see how they use code as well. But the big takeaway here is look for problems in everything so that you become very familiar with problem solving. The next thing that we need to talk about would be finding reasons to specialize in a specific area. And I know earlier I said that you should diversify your skill set, but what I mean here is finding a way to be a key go-to person for a specific subject, but still be a generalist so that you can solve a bunch of different problems. Basically, let's say for example, you want to be the go-to guy for Node.js development or something to do with database terms of a specific flavor of databases, NoSQL or SQL. So let's say, for example, you're the Node.js, NoSQL person. Anytime that something now has to be done for your team always will look to you for that to actually happen. That then makes you an invaluable cog in that machine. But if you want a specific place to look into, machine learning is a perfect place to start in this day and age, because it is completely red hot right now and everybody's talking about it. Then cybersecurity will be the next runner up, and obviously web development will be a next place to start if you're going to specialize in one specific area. Find something inside of development. Again, machine learning is a good place to go because there's a bunch of places that you can actually take that. But wherever you want to go, find a place that you can sink your teeth into, and then if you can find it, you can judge this by understanding that you would want to spend 2, maybe even 3 hours per day learning more about that particular subject. That, my friend, means that you should take more time in that particular area. But I'm curious, what would be your 2 places that you would want to spend most of your time in terms of development? Leave that down in the comments, because again, like I said, I'm curious and I just want to know. But just like everything else that we've talked about so far, let's give some practical tips on how we can actually find a place to sink our teeth into and become a little bit more specialized. So the simplest way to do this might sound very tongue-in-cheek, but the simplest way to do this just by taking an online course, simply because it exposes you to something that you necessarily wouldn't have thought about or even researched yourself, probably wouldn't even known to go and research it. But now you do, and now you can go find more avenues to learn more about that particular thing. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go and find something that has a certificate that at the end of it, but it is a nice to have if you're going to put this on a resume. If you're just doing this to learn something new for your business or just to learn something new as a hobby, you don't necessarily need a certificate, but again, it is a nice to have. The other way to do this, and this is a bit more pro or intermediate level, but you can find a open source project and start contributing to that, because that, my friend, will open your eyes to a lot of different things that you didn't even understand were a part of the development lifecycle, because maybe you've been developing things you're on your own if you're self-taught programming. And if you have been doing that, it's the perfect thing, or the perfect thing that you should segue into is an open source project. It will change your life for the better forever. The main thing that I want you to take away from this bullet point here is to find something and dive deep. The next thing that you can do to become an A1 developer is become very, very good at communication. Writing software is more about actually reading code than there is more about writing it 9 times out of 10. And the reason why I'm saying that is because when you are actually on a team, you're going to read the team members' code on your team. For the most part, when you come into a new team, especially, you're going to read or need to read the entire code base from top to bottom. At least you should at some point. And another part of the actual job in your job description is talking to more humans. So you don't just code all day long. You spend more time talking to humans than actual code. So spending some time to actually understand what you're trying to say in your code so that it's more descriptive to the people on your team makes you A1, because a lot of people, and I can say this from my own experience, a lot of people, including myself at one point, and sometimes I struggle with this myself, have a hard time describing what they're trying to do inside of their code. And then make it even worse, have a hard time describing what it does in 3 months. Figuring out what you're trying to say in your code is a critical skill to keep sharp. And I'll be honest here, it's a hard thing to notice, and it's even harder to correct when you're not actually doing it in the beginning, because most of the time, especially if you're a self-taught programmer, you're talking to yourself about the problems that you're trying to solve. So if that is the case, get better at actually talking to more people. And I don't want to sound like a broken record or situations like that, but the best way to do that is to find an open source project or go to a hackathon, because then you have to talk to people. But some more practical steps in doing this would be practice technical writing. And believe it or not, this is harder than it seems. Think about it like this. Imagine you're the person that now has to go and write all of the documentation for people that will come to this particular team that you're on 5 years down the line. What do you want them to actually be able to do when they come to this code base? Do you want them to be able to take the project and run with, or do you not want them to have an inkling of what's going on? You probably want the latter. Exactly. So doing your due diligence on writing good documentation is a must-have skill. But you don't have to do this alone, because there are tools that allow you to do this a little bit easier, and one of them is Swim.io. And take another development example here, take the Nuxt.js developer docs. Let me just say, these are probably the best developer docs I've ever come across in my career, because it's very succinct, to the point, and it tells you exactly what you need to know in the moment to get your job done. Nothing more, nothing less. This is one of the ways that you can actually practice making better sense of what you're trying to say in your code and when you're actually speaking about it in front of people. The other way that you can do this is by joining developer community. You can do this easily by just joining Discord communities or spending time inside of Reddit. The more you talk about code, the more you're going to understand the paradigms and idioms of code. And then, like I used to say to students that I was teaching before in the bootcamp that I was a part of, you will probably start to dream in code as well. Oh, and as an honorable mention, you can also join the free Code Camp forum community if you're looking for a free place to actually plug yourself into and get started. Obviously, the next thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is keeping up with learning and staying very, very adaptable inside of the tech industry, because it moves very fast, as we all saw in 2023 because of what happened with AI. But here you want to make sure that you're doing 3 things: follow the industry trends, dedicate time to learning, and make sure that you're attending developer conference. In terms of following industry trends, you want to make sure that you are up to date on industry news in terms of all things tech. And a good way to do that would be the TDLR newsletter, which has a bunch of different things that you can actually subscribe to. But you want to make sure that you're doing this so that you're on the bleeding edge of emerging tech that you can now go into your company or into your own business and use. Because if there's a new tool that now has been proven that is on the scene that is going to solve a particular problem that you have, it is better for you to know it early than late. Then, like I've mentioned earlier in this video, you want to make sure that you're dedicating time to learning. That is focused, uninterrupted time in flow state, actually doing deep work. And again, in my opinion, if it's possible, try to do your deep work earliest in the morning, because most of the time no one is around you so that you can actually focus. Then make sure that you're attending conferences and webinars. I mean, everybody likes a good con, right? And if you've never been to a con, this is the perfect time to change that, because you're going to learn and have fun at the same time. But going to conferences helps you find new ways of thinking, and developer conferences are amazing for this, but I would even branch out into more than just developer conferences. Go to a bunch of different conferences that interest you, because you're not only going to see a bunch of different things inside the conference, you're going to hear perspectives from different people, and it's going to push you forward in every area of your life, including your career. Obviously, the last thing that you want to do here is find a way to build real world projects. Now, projects like Pong and things like that are well and fine, but what you should probably try to find yourself doing sooner than later, especially if you're trying to place this on a resume, build a real world project that a team would know, understand, and be able to talk about with you. So an example of that would be something like a bug tracker or something like a Kickstarter clone that you can easily talk about, that they understand, and that you would have really deep knowledge on the technology that you use to actually get this done. Another practical idea on something to go and build, something that you can actually go and use in your own life, because then it's fun to actually build, and more than likely you will finish it rather quickly. But again, the thing that you need to make sure that you're doing is find a way to build real world project, something that you can actually tangibly give to someone and tell them about, because without doing that, you're never going to be able to level up your skills on a quarterly or even a yearly basis. Build real world projects as much as possible, and if you can find them, do things that actually enhance your own life, because you're also going to have fun in the end. At the end of the day, that's what programming is all about, having fun. Okay, so now you have at least some things to go and work on in terms of becoming a better programmer. If you don't have a programming language that you actually can go and become more proficient in, probably want to start there. That is where you currently find yourself. Start right here.